Order. Welcome everybody to our September 28th Executive Council meeting. We had already had a department head report previous to this meeting. We have regrets from Councillor Calvin D'Entremont. There's always the invitation to stand and move. It's always on the agenda, so feel free if you need to take a break. Number 3 on the agenda, are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Conflict of interest. Does anybody have a conflict of interest to declare? I don't see any, but if there is any issue throughout the meeting, you can declare a conflict then. Number 4, adoption of minutes from September 14th, 2023, our regular council meeting minutes. They are attached. Are there any errors or omissions in the meeting minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are adopted as presented. Number 5, department head report. There is an attachment. So this is the big report. I did have a question about this. There are some boxes that are completely covered in blue all the way across, or the color all the way across. I wasn't sure why, like that.
I believe that means it's complete.
It's completed. Okay. I was kind of curious.
Yeah. Well,
because some of them it says in the box, but some of them it like doesn't say anything there,
right?
I
see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I hadn't noticed that.
Okay. Were there any questions or comments on the report? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on. We don't have to approve that, do we? Do we? No. It's just presented to us. Okay. Next, for decision and discussion, 6A, Article P5A, employee definition. So this was, we've already had the 7-day notice. We're looking for approval of this tonight. We had discussed it at our last meeting, and it was just, there were some changes around, there was some language changes. Are there any questions or comments on that? Okay, do we feel comfortable approving this? Can somebody make a motion to approve it? Moved by Councillor Bork, seconded by our warden. Any questions or comments on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Next, we have Article P3, sick leave. There's an attachment. This was to accommodate the changes for the 4-day work week. We had discussed this at our last meeting as well. That's why, yeah. So instead of days, it talks about hours, just it's changes with regulations from the government as well. So we had to make sure that our policy aligned with that. That's what it is. Moved and seconded. Questions on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Article C11, procurement policy. There's an attachment. We also discussed this. Some language changes. Any questions or comments on this one? Somebody willing to make a motion to move this one? Moved by Councillor Surratt, seconded by Councillor Bork. Questions on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Next, we have for D, the Joint Police Advisory Commission terms of reference. So these are the terms of reference that have been adopted. They've also been approved already by the committee, and they've also been approved by the municipality of Yarmouth. So it's for us, we are here to endorse them as well. Basically, they need that from us too. Second, moved by Councillor Bork, seconded by Councillor Boudreau. Questions on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Next, we have for E, REMO communication. This one is being brought forward by Councillor Saulnier. Press your button. Press your button, Councillor Saulnier. Go ahead.
Thank you. I had an email on the last hurricane, Hurricane Lee. And after that, I went to Wedgeport at the coffee shop, I call it the museum. And we had, I had a lot of questions about the preparation for this storm. And they were concerned, I'll rewind a bit. I guess you get media warnings, you get social media warnings, and, you know, get your generators going and all that stuff. And they were concerned that they didn't have a phone number or anybody to call. Now, I'm told that you can go on the website and find it, and for them, it wasn't good enough. And they're saying that this particular hurricane, for instance, kept an eye on Southwest Nova Scotia, and it hit us bang on. We were lucky that it had lost a lot of its pep. If it hadn't, that had been a lot of, I think a lot of things could have gone wrong, but it didn't. So, but while they were waiting for this to come, they were very apprehensive and very worried that something might happen, and that they had no communications with Remo nor the municipality. So I said I would bring this up at the meeting and see if there's any suggestions we could do. One suggestion was to put phone numbers and highlight any comfort zones or safety issues could be done. A brochure could be put in different venues, such as the museum, such as Legion, such as community halls, and just have it there for the public, and that this information could be passed along. I really am open to suggestions on this. I think they were concerned, and rightfully so. So.
Thank you. Any comments on,
I can defer to other comments from councillors before
Okay.
responding.
Councillor Digdon?
Thank you very much. I'd like to back up Councillor Sonia 100%. I feel as though sometimes there's not a lot of information to put out because of the uncertainty of the nature of the emergency that you may be dealing with, but just anything at all that can reassure the people that you're on top of it, that you're watching it, that the Remo coordination center is watching it, and that you'll have more information and when it becomes available, and that you are taking steps that if something, in this case, if the hurricane does hit land in our area, that you know that we are taking steps to help the people out and stuff like that. I don't know if you people know. I guess I put a lot of stuff on Facebook sometimes, maybe too much, I don't know. But each time that we are having a storm or anything like that, I always put on that, you know, that our Remo coordination center is working on it. They're watching it closely. Take care of your elders, your elderly, take care of your friends. And I always finish it off that if anyone needs help, and that to please give me a call, that I'm available 24 hours a day and that for them. But I think something should be put out in the case, you know, just to reassure the people. That means a lot right there. And that, so yeah, it's maybe we dropped the ball on this one a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Surratt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that I noticed on this last storm, coming to what Councillor Sonia and Councillor Digdon said, was on the Facebook Municipal Council. We have many councillors there on Facebook. It seems they all know what to do. Comfort centers. There was a question about comfort centers. Why? In my area, which was the club in Rinse Island, why we hadn't warned people, why weren't the messages given out of when they were going to be open, who was taking care of it, was it geared up, was there going to be food and stuff like that? And I ended up not having a whole lot to say. I did put on there that, you know, they are prepared, but I didn't really know. And our CAO did put a remark on there, which I appreciated. And I didn't realize is that the way I understood our CEO, what he said was the Remo will call the comfort centers. And I didn't know that. I thought it was our job, not knowing how it worked, that it was our job in Rinse Island, where it's a comfort center there, that we should have been ahead of the game, and we were not. I'm kind of learning as we go. In fact, there's a meeting Sunday on the island about all this preparedness and that. So I'll leave it to the CAO. He's going to answer a few things, and maybe he can delve into the comfort center thing. Thank you.
Counselor Sonia?
Thank you for giving me a second go at this. I overlooked a couple of my notes here. I want to make sure that this is not just a concern about weather. It's also a concern about forest fires. In light of what happened in Barrington, this could happen in our backyards as well. And I was told by many fishermen that we live in dead-end zones. You know, Pumlico, Wedgeport, Surratt's Island, not Pigneys Point, sorry, but Como's Hill, uh, Morocco Point, Abrams River, they're all dead ends, and they're all can be cut off quite quickly by a disaster of sorts. And so that has to be kept in mind if there was a muster list, for instance. Um, Fishermen also said if that should happen, they should be kept in mind as a source of evacuation. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO Muse.
So I'm going to do my best to answer these questions. I mean, because ultimately this communication is the responsibility of our regional EMO. And our regional coordinator he reports to all 3 units, but works closely with Argyle. So Argyle hosts that person. So in any emergency, we know that the problem is always communication. It is the number one issue that we're constantly trying to resolve. So when the community doesn't feel that it was properly communicated to, they're probably right. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't some areas where certain pieces of information actually shouldn't go out before an event. So I'm just going to take a moment to talk a little bit about what we heard, because we did meet on this with the Remo team yesterday, and we talked about some of this as well. One issue that the town of Yarmouth is also facing is this idea of when do comfort centers open, when do they get announced, et cetera, et cetera. Remo has a comfort center plan. So there is a plan of action as to how those things are to go. Now, 2 things. Number one, who knew that, right? Very few. So we're immediately moving towards making that available to all councillors and all CAOs. That's going to happen. I think my best guess is going to be 7 days, depending on how quickly the technology can get it up online. One of the 3 websites is going to host that information. Why is that important? Well, you might have some questions or problems with those policies. Like, this is what we're going to do in times of an emergency, and we're supposed to do it for the 3 units. My post on the Surratt's Island Facebook site was mostly accurate, but even my post is really not the most appropriate course of action. And I will say that honestly, because information changes rather quickly and is managed mostly by the Remo organization. So it ought to have been them to either respond or maybe check with what I put on. What I said was that the Island and District is a designated comfort center area, meaning, let me rephrase that. There's one comfort center officially marked in that district, in that area, and that's the Club Social des Îles. That is your official comfort center. And Remo designates those comfort centers. It doesn't mean that there can't be community centers opened by communities. That is always the case. It's always available to anyone in any community. They can open it up at any time. Remo usually is responsible for either saying you should open and asking if they're available, or advertising the fact that they will open. Here's the problem. We also say that residents should be ready for 72 hours. And so that's the rub. So we say be ready in 72 hours, and we can't say at the same time, and oh, by the way, we're going to open 18 comfort centers on the day of the hurricane when we just told you to stay home. So our communication needs work. There's no question about that. I think that the Remo organization recognizes that. And every emergency teaches us something else. Remo organizations are responsible to do things like pre-planning. So what they typically do there is they do a hazard analysis. So they assess the highest risk of probability of things happening in your community. So they can't have a plan for everything, but they should have a plan for the highest risk things. And some of you would probably may have noted one that I'm quite sure we don't have a plan, a written plan for. It's in action, but it's not completed. And one would be, cutting off communities and how that would work around flooding coastal. I know that coastal flooding is a priority of Remo. They do have some plans around that, but I don't know how specific it gets in terms of what if Wedgeport gets cut off, what if Pygmies Point, Como's Hill, et cetera, gets cut off. I don't know if it goes in that detail, but we will bring that to Remo. I think that some of this sparked with the fact that a comfort center was announced before the emergency, and I think that sparked additional. Well, what about us, right? So there was that kind of happened. A lot of anxiety on this hurricane, and there was a lot of information out there too. But I'm actually glad that your residents complained that the information wasn't as deep as they would have liked from us, because what it means is that they trust the information coming from us. And if we're not giving them enough, then they're not sure what to trust in terms of information out there. There was a lot of information on Lee, and it could have hit us a lot different. So your point is well taken. You're raising good points. I think all of them should be brought to the Remo executive. Some of you sit on the Remo executive team. We ought to really raise those issues to them. I also think we have a bit of a hangover with the transition from Argyle EMO to Remo. I think that everybody that was in Argyle EMO knew to call 648-2414, but I'm not sure who they would call today. So there may be some additional information we can put out. Your suggestion, putting things out in community halls, is a good one. We can take a look at all of those things and try to improve communication. It is always a problem. Always a problem. It's always the issue that in exercises or in reality. So if people are saying they didn't get enough information, they're right. They didn't, because but at the same time, we have to manage that information to make sure that it's not provided too early to cause people to go to those places that we're preparing. So as an example, we would never want anybody to get on the road and drive to a comfort center on the day of the hurricane. Right? So we want people to stay home. We want them to be safe. Even the RCMP said, don't get on the road because of the wind. So we want to make sure that the message does not go contrary to other emergency management people. I agree, and I have made this statement to Remo that just because we can't announce the comfort centers doesn't mean we shouldn't announce that they would be available if needed. That's the comfort that people might be missing. So we're going to work on that. And anyway, a long answer to your questions, your concerns, very valid. We'll bring them to that table, and I would encourage you as elected to bring it to that table as well, because I think the town and municipality might share your view, and we'll go from there. We'll try to find that balance between providing good, timely information and not saying nothing, if that makes any sense. Thank you.
Councillor Bork.
Thank you. Coming back with the wildfires, I know that the locals home were concerned about emergency communications, what to do, where to go. They weren't sure that anything was in place. There was a policy or anything that was going on, and I think I called you, Ella, about that, and you had said that Remo had a plan and everything, that everything was okay, that if there was something, they would be communicated. But it's communications, and maybe we could get a magnets to put on our fridge to put on in every household. An idea, and it works sometimes, as long as they have a number there that they can call. Yeah, thank you. That's all I want to say.
Well, thank you for that. And there are evacuation plans in place for communities and what happens in terms of evacuation. Those plans do exist. And evacuation. So I'll go back and say that emergencies today are much different than they were 10 years ago. Not only are they happening more often, the public concern has increased probably tenfold. The media displaying the situation does it much earlier than it used to. We used to think, it's just a puff of wind, right? But we don't think that anymore. With climate change, we know that these things can be more prevalent. So herein lies the question, is Remo adequately resourced? And so I think this council has a place to play, or a role to play, around making sure that they are appropriately resourced so they can answer the call that councils are expecting of them. And I think that what you'll see is that will change rather quickly. The budget for this is going to change. The resources are going to increase because this is an issue of community interest, and we don't want to be unprepared. And I'm probably not going to tell the remote coordinator that they're going to get a magnet with his number, because he may change his phone. I don't know what he'll do. All joking aside, that the fact that you raised that just highlights what we're dealing with, which is a really much higher community concern around this, and an expectation that we're going to deliver. And I will also say, and this is not to demean the provincial EMO in any way, shape, or form, the provincial EMO is taking a different stance on emergencies. They are expecting more from local EMO, and they will provide resources and support, but it's from further away. So they have focused their time and energy on their central 24/7 system, and they have an ECC open all the time, basically at the ready, and for Fiona or any other things that come in the future. But they don't necessarily have the same staff coming into the regions the way that they used to. So as a resource perspective, we're more on our own, and we have to adjust to that as well. Thanks.
Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. Just going to keep it short. I wonder, maybe when there is downtime and no emergencies or pending emergencies, if that would be the time to put out like a lot of information, and a lot of people may not even know who our remote coordinator is now, what his job is, how it works when there is emergencies, that yes, there is plans in place, but being as though some emergencies are changing sometimes by the minute as far as fires and forest fires and stuff like that, but just reassurance, I think, is the big thing in a lot of these cases. And that's all. And at least people will say, oh yeah, no, we've got a remote coordinator and he's working on it and he's looking at different plans, and there's a team out there ready if something happens. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Sonia.
I'm old enough to remember Groundhog Day, and that was extensive flooding back in those days. SAR was isolated, was an island, Rocco Point, Abrams River, Sluice Point, all them areas. Make no mistake that our fishermen are professionals. And if needed be, in times of storms, I don't think there's anybody better equipped than a fisherman. They've been there, they've done that, and they'll do it again. So just don't leave them up. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions? Does that answer your concern? Do you feel like you have something you can go back to your residents with? Go ahead.
They just want an answer. They don't want to be ignored.
Right.
And yeah, sure.
Okay, good. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Councillor Digdon?
Just one last thing, I can assure you that at our next REMO meeting, that we will be bringing it up, or that we'll have it put on the agenda to discuss and talk about it. Thank you.
Would somebody want to make a motion to bring it to Remo? Would that be something we could do? Okay, do we have a seconder on that one? Okay. Questions on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Next is cell phone service in Argyle. That is also Councillor Saunier. Go ahead.
Thank you again. Sitting at the same table, communications was brought about, and cell phone reception, I don't think is an exception or just related to Argyle. I had trouble today. We all have trouble every day. And I don't know what we can do about it, but we can at least write a letter of support or complaint, and maybe get our neighbors to help us with that. It's just most people now operate by cell phone. They don't even have home phones, and a lot of people are are living summer times at camps where there's no cell phone. So it is a danger if there's no communications. And I mean, right here in Tuscan, we can't even call home. So that's
That's true.
it. Thank you.
Years ago, I do remember we had sent a letter to CRTC, I believe, because I had brought it up because there's very little cell reception in Quinnen as well. And I mean, even the 103, I travel a lot for work, and I've said, I don't know how many times I've said we can put a man on the moon, but we can't get cell phone reception on the highway. I don't understand. So I hear you. It's been something we've talked about for sure. Counselor Donaldson.
Yeah, I mean, there's areas that aren't covered and never were covered that should be covered.
Mhm.
But I would like to know how we find out what has happened to the service that we used to have.
Mhm.
Because I have to go outdoors on my deck.
Yeah.
I used to be able to talk anywhere, right? And around Argyle, there's lots of people complaining. It got better when they put the Wedgeport Tower up. Now it's because you're looking right at it 6-7 kilometers away. But what's happened recently? Have they done something with their equipment? Is the equipment not up to date? Like, it's terrible. Is there anybody from has there been anything come to administration, like to the office from the people that administer this type of stuff?
Counselor Donaldson, we haven't received anything official in that kind of detail. I would love, as you would, to know. We do a lot of business in the GTA, the Greater Tuscan area, and there's like no reception there. And I can't even complain if I know anybody from Kempt or Quinnen, because they have zero.
Yeah.
It's actually easier because at least you have no hope of coverage there. In GTA, you have some hope, which it might be even more frustrating. So it's definitely an issue that I hear everywhere. We did reach out to our local MLA asking questions about this, because the regional Association of Municipal Administrators have raised this as an issue because it's a tri-county issue. So essentially, we have done that, and his response was that Premier Houston recently made an announcement saying that it was a rather critical service. And so I believe that the lead department is the Department of, I think is it Department of Business? Department of Growth, I don't know. The name changes, but it's economic development, basically, at the provincial level. They're responsible for looking into this now. That's the extent of what I know.
Okay. It's just frustrating because the infrastructure is there to give us the service that we used to have.
Yeah.
I just wonder what happens. Does that equipment get tired and go to sleep, or
Yeah.
wear out?
I can only speculate that volume may have an issue, that there's more and more use, less and less landlines, more and more transits. It's
Okay,
all speculation.
That would, yeah, but it's good speculation. Makes sense. Good thing we have good Wi-Fi now. You can put your cell phone on Wi-Fi.
Yes, you can put your cell phone on Wi-Fi, and I encourage you to check your settings and take a look at that if you're at home and have good Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
because it'll
We
work.
want to figure it out, but don't have to go on the deck anymore.
Especially in the winter. Counselor Bork.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought this up because, I mean, I think it's a safety issue as well.
Mhm.
I mean, if you're driving on the highway, I mean, I know I'm driving through Argyle and it's like you're echoing and it's breaking up all the time. If you're in trouble, you can't call no one because there's no way you're going to get through. You're driving by Nikhil, halftime, you've got a 50-50 chance you're talking to someone, it cuts right off. Then you're driving you're going towards Belleville, which is okay. Then you come towards Tuscan, it's another thing. Then you go to, I mean, I know all the hot spots,
Mhm.
and it's on,
That's
off,
true.
on, off, on, off. And it's the same thing going towards Barrington and Woods Harbor. There's no service at all. So I don't know. I think we should be sending something back to the province or whoever to see if they can do something better than what we have now. I mean, I think it's something. I mean, all the emergencies we have and safety, and I think it's important that we do have good cell service because that's what we're depending on now.
Sure. Thank you.
We don't pay enough our bills. Yeah.
Counselor Digdon.
Thank you. Just wondering if it would be in order to send a letter to the province and also to the providers and explain to them that, we'd like an answer as to why this has been happening and seems to be getting worse instead of better.
Are you willing to make a motion?
I'd like Mr. Saunier.
Okay.
Well, I'll make that.
Okay.
And I'll second that
Okay.
motion.
Any
Thank
more
you.
discussion? Counselor, Scott, did you want to say something?
I just want to
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to add on what our CAO shared. You can see on the agenda, there's an attachment to the cell phone coverage. I just wanted to share that this is coming from REN. REN has done a survey. As you know, they took on the project about the internet, and they're kind of looking into the cell phone issue. So what they started with was a survey that went out. Within a month, they had 534 response, which is pretty good for a response for a survey. So they have some information to work with. They were also looking at approaching the province to kind of look at what they could do. Also, we were in a conversation with the municipality of Shelburne. They have done some work with Bell, but have basically gone nowheres with them. So there are a lot of people talking about this, and Ren is kind of taking the lead too on it. So I just wanted to share that with council.
Thank you. Counselor Surratt?
Scott,
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Are there any other questions or comments on that? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried.
When I saw that, I thought back to you, this 5 or 6 years.
It's been a
ago
while.
now, so you
Mhm.
brought that up and further ahead.
No further ahead.
Behind.
I know. I think so. Do you need a lozenge?
Right. I'm testing negative.
Okay.
Probably not a stroke.
I don't think it comes with a cough. All right, for number 7, correspondence and for information. So 7A, there is a response letter from Minister Masland regarding the Tin Mine Road, the safety of the Tin Mine Road. So the warden for the municipality, for the town Shelburne, is it municipality or town? I can't remember. Sent a letter with concerns about the Tin Mine Road safety, and there is a response that they're going to look into it. Next, we have B. There's a letter to Minister Guilbeault from the municipality of Barrington regarding the exemption for volunteer emergency providers from the new fuel charges, so from the carbon tax. So they sent a letter requesting that those volunteer services are important and kind of hopefully be nice to be able to give them some kind of a help, a break. So that is a letter that went in. Next, there is 7C, the response from the municipality of the District of Yarmouth regarding our track and field project. So they sent in writing confirmation of their contribution for up to $200,000 for our track and field. So that's really good. We thank them for that. CAO Muse.
I will also state unofficially that we received the same confirmation from the town of Yarmouth, 200,000. And we have, I believe, a budget amount there as well that makes the project total budget at 2.6. We know it will not cost that right now. It will be below that. And a couple other things on timing, in case you're wondering. Our procurement was stupendous. It worked really well. And the firm is national and they are outside of themselves good. So they are really working it. They're doing it. They've got everything set up. It'll be paved. If it's not started today, it'll start soon. They want to do it soon before the climate changes too much. We initially thought the whole project could be completed this fall, but that will not be the case. We'll be paving, and it actually is advantageous to the project to let that cure rather than immediately put something on it. I can say that the pavers are like also a national firm. Like this is a very specific job, and they're here and they're doing it. So the track and field users are aware that they will not be able to use it until the spring of 2024, and they've all said the same thing: get it done right. We're patient. We can't wait. Last thing on the track and field was in the initial plans hoped for an outbuilding or a storage building. We don't have sufficient funds under the 2.6 to do that. We're in contact with the principal to say, okay, this is the situation. What do you got? And so I think he's gonna stir with that information, and maybe there's another way for that kind of service to be provided. And when I say service, I mean storage, accessible bathrooms, and the potential for a small cafeteria, not kitchen, but like something that has running water and a fridge. Those things would all be excellent if they could use those facilities without actually entering the school. It doesn't mean it can't be attached, but that's a whole other story. Getting into the weeds there now, but I suspect once the track is completed, there may be a motivation for the track and field group and other groups to say, "Hey, we need storage, we need other things." So that's really where we're at right now. So that's, if there are any questions on the project, I won't open to all projects. This one's on the track, so if there's questions, I'm here to answer what I can.
Thank you for the update. Councillor Sonia?
Thank you. Alain, is there lighting needed for this track?
There is no lighting on this track project at this time, and there may never be lighting. And
Okay.
is there a need for lighting? Well, there's always certainly there's not a I wouldn't say there's an urgent requirement for that, because most of the events do not require. But obviously, if you had that, you could have evening events, and that might make a big difference. But that's not contemplated in this phase.
I was just wondering if our climate permits, lighting or to use it in the evening after dark, that's all.
I don't have any information to suggest it couldn't. Depending on the lighting. I mean, track events are one thing and field are another. If you're running a track, you need a certain kind of lighting. If you're throwing a javelin, probably a bit more. Just saying. may want to take a look at that one a little bit more. Our light pollution enthusiasts may not like the solution. So I would say that we're not planning that right now, but it is possible to do. There are some track and field facilities that are contemplating lighting. And in fact, I think the Université Saint-Anne might be installing that as we speak or soon. So we don't have it in this phase. If the demand permits, maybe we have another phase on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay, seeing none. Number 8, financial requests. I don't see any. Number 9, agenda topics for next meeting. Notice of motion by councillors. Anything anybody wants to add there? Okay, seeing none. Anything in question period? Nothing question period. 11, we have 2 in-camera items. Mariner Center expansion and Tri-County Planning Initiative. Can we have a motion to go in camera? All those in favor?